Dricus du Plessis is officially not injured. Conor McGregor talks about a potential UFC return. John Jones gets maybe the worst achievement in UFC history. Talk about a little bit about Paddy Pimblett, Israel Adesanya's return, and Tai Tuivasa finally speaks out about his UFC career. I'm going to be covering a bunch of small stories in the UFC space today, guys. And if you guys enjoy these kind of videos, then let me know in the comments and drop a like, as I enjoy making these, but I need to know what you guys think. So let's get right into it. Dricus du Plessis is not injured. He came out and posted on Instagram. Okay, so everyone had their opinions and rumors and stories about a shin break and injuries, etc. I found it all very entertaining. Unfortunately, none of it's true. Myself and the UFC have already discussed the fight date and opponent. The June fight was never signed. I did not pull out of any fight. I am the champion. I know when I fight. You as a contender just show up. And when you're told what to do. Fight announcement coming soon. Stay tuned. Za. Prepare to be amazed. Still knocks. So Dricus du Plessis comes out and expels all the rumors. Says, hey guys, I'm actually not injured. I'm ready to go. And I've never been booked for UFC 317 in June, so I don't know what you guys are yapping about. Obviously, myself and a lot of other MMA YouTubers were under the impression that Dricus might have been injured, as a source that came out and said he had a really bad shin injury, but he shuts all the rumors to bed and says, no, I'm ready to go. So we could potentially see Dricus versus Khamzat in July or August. That's probably what the UFC is going to be looking to do. From this Instagram post, to me, it does not seem like Dricus is going to be fighting at UFC 317, as we're less than 2 months away from the fight, and it's not signed, and I wouldn't imagine he would be taking a short notice fight against Khamzat. But it is good to know that he's not going to be out until 2026. That was the rumor going around. Dricus has a really gnarly injury. He will be out for an entire year, and yeah, man, him versus Khamzat is one of the biggest fights you can make in the UFC, and I'm excited to see it. And I ain't gonna lie, man, Dricus's mic skills and on the mic, it's underrated. I can't wait to see whenever him and Khamzat have a press conference, what one-liners Dricus is gonna come out with. Will he make Strickland, Adesanya, and Khamzat all cry back to back to back? We're gonna have to find out, but I wonder why or who started this rumor that he was like seriously injured, and why would they start it? Just to like set the MMA world on fire? Because even major news sources like bunch of MMA websites and media were coming out and agreeing with it, saying they heard that Dricus is injured. It's very interesting. He's come out and said it's completely false. So yeah, man, let's get this Khamzat Chimaev fight going. I want to see Dricus return to the octagon. He last fought in February. We're only in April, so it hasn't been that long since he's fought. He destroyed Sean Strickland. I would like to see the Khamzat fight in July or August. That'd be a good amount of time for him to have hat off and get a full training camp in. So yeah, also, who do you guys think wins the Dricus du Plessis Khamzat fight? I'm going back and forth in my prediction. I am going with Khamzat Chimaev by first round submission, but if there's anybody that could plot armor their way to a win over Khamzat, it would be Dricus du Plessis. And speaking of another man who's trying to plot armor his return, Conor McGregor said that he's only going to return for a stadium, and posted a clip of the WWE WrestleMania being in what looks like a stadium in Las Vegas, and says, I'll only come back to a stadium. And then he gaslights Iron Michael Chandler once again, saying unfinished business. And you know that Michael Chandler is going to bite on anything that Conor McGregor says. So you can expect Michael Chandler to be out for another 2 years, waiting on Conor McGregor to return. Honestly, we might see Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler headline UFC 400 with the way this is going. And how hilarious would that be? But yeah, guys, let's cut the nonsense. I do not think that Conor McGregor will ever fight in the UFC octagon ever again. This guy hasn't fought since 2021. It's almost been 4 years since he last fought. And even recently, a couple months ago, he came out and said that he's happy with his UFC career and almost hinted that he's never coming back. And now that he's saying he will only come back to a stadium, first of all, when does the UFC ever go to a stadium? They don't go to stadiums very often. When was the last time? Australia, maybe? Perth? Is that a stadium? But the UFC doesn't do stadiums very often. Most of the time, it's arenas. And the reason they don't do stadiums is probably because they are not confident that they can sell out an entire stadium. Now, don't get me wrong, a Conor McGregor fight would sell out a stadium. I just don't know if the UFC would be willing to do that. And for Michael Chandler, man, you've just got to almost feel bad for him. Conor McGregor's just got this guy on a leash, and he's listening to everything Conor says. Anytime Conor takes a deep breath, Michael Chandler goes on Twitter and asks him where he's at, see you at the top, all this stuff. Michael Chandler's literally been gooning for a Conor McGregor fight for the last 3 years, and I don't think he's ever going to get it. So I think Michael Chandler either needs to pack it up or he needs to just move on with his life because he's never fighting Conor McGregor. I think that's clear. They've already had the build up. Conor McGregor pulled out on last second. I just don't see a world where Conor McGregor versus Michael Chandler ever happens. And by the time these guys probably ever were both ready to fight, they would both be in their 40s, and who would care to see it? So, yeah, McGregor is saying he's only going to come back to a stadium. Let's be real. He's never coming back. And is this the worst achievement of all time in your guys' opinion? This might be the most pathetic achievement that I've ever seen in the history of the UFC. Jon Jones is officially the longest reigning UFC heavyweight champion of all time. That's kind of hilarious. He's only had 2 fights at heavyweight in a span of over 2 years, 2.5 years. And yeah, as you can see, this post says he earned that by ducking Tom Aspinall for 2 years. If you guys do not know, Tom Aspinall, I believe, is now the longest reigning interim heavyweight champion. He's been interim champion since November 11th of 2023. So we're coming up on a year and a half of Tom Aspinall being an interim champion in heavyweight. And Jon Jones is still ducking. He's ducking for so long that he's became the longest reigning heavyweight champion of all time. Just think about that. All those wins Stipe had, beating Fabricio Verdum, getting those 3 title defenses. Jon Jones, just by sitting out, pricing himself out, ducking competition, only fighting people like retired Stipe, has now passed up the longest reigning heavyweight of all time in Stipe Miocic. It's now Jon Jones. And if I'm Jon Jones, this is an embarrassing accomplishment. This pretty much says that, hey, I'm a coward. I held the belt for so long, and I chose not to fight anyone for so long, that now I am officially the longest reigning UFC champion in heavyweight champion in history. I mean, is this something you really look yourself in the mirror and are proud of? I don't think so. Now, if you guys didn't see my video yesterday, it's rumored that the UFC is looking to move on from Jon Jones, at least temporarily, as he's on the shelf for 6 months, looking to book Tom Aspinall versus Cyril Gane for the second defense of Tom Aspinall's interim title, which just makes Jon Jones look even more pathetic. I love that Tom Aspinall is going to defend his interim belt again. Every time he defends that interim belt, it just makes Jon Jones look more and more like a paper champ, because that's exactly what it is. Jon Jones is the most disputed champion in UFC history. If he'd have just called it quits at his light heavyweight run and just moved on with his life and never went up to heavyweight, no one would have cared. It's the fact that this guy is sitting on the heavyweight belt demanding $50 million to fight Tom Aspinall. He didn't ask for $50 million to fight Stipe or to fight Cyril Gane, but when Tom Aspinall comes into the equation, he somehow needs $50 million because he knows that he needs that money to cope whenever he loses. But either way, this guy's an embarrassment to the sport. He's literally just running a humiliation ritual on the UFC. So cut ties with Jon Jones. He makes a mockery of the sport. No one cares that he's the longest reigning heavyweight champ. He's the worst heavyweight champion in the history of the organization. And yeah, that's all there is to say. Speaking of a guy who is getting worse, no, I'm kidding. Paddy Pimblett, I saw this stat and I had to come out and point this out. And I picked Paddy Pimblett to beat Michael Chandler, but for the people that ask why don't I want to see Paddy Pimblett face Justin Gaethje, listen, man, Justin Gaethje is just another old, washed-up striker that Paddy Pimblett's going to end up getting to the ground and dominating, either submitting or TKO. And Paddy Pimblett's last 3 opponents are a combined 0-13 on a 13-fight losing streak. Chandler 0-3. Bobby Green 0-2. I think Bobby Green's 1-4 in his last 5. And Tony Ferguson 0-8. And yeah, man, Paddy fighting these old, washed-up fighters. I don't want to see it anymore. I want to see this guy face somebody that's young, hungry, and in their prime. Even Jared Gordon was 34 years old. Tony Ferguson was 39. Bobby Green was like 38. Michael Chandler, 39. It's like, come on, dude. Paddy Pimblett, listen, he's an exciting fighter. I'd argue he's even a big star, but the UFC need to stop babying this guy, man. This guy's been fighting 40-year-olds that are going to be shipped off to the nursing home soon and to have a combined record of 0-13 in their last 13 fights. And it's like, dude, he looked amazing in his last fight, and I even predicted him to beat Michael Chandler. I just didn't see a way that Chandler would beat Paddy. I don't think Chandler's very good, but it's time for Paddy to actually face a challenge in his career. Because guess what? If the UFC books him against Gaethje, he's going to destroy Gaethje. Paddy Pimblett is going to walk through Gaethje. That's just what it is. Gaethje he's old. He's washed up. I didn't think he looked amazing against Fiziev, I'll be honest. And if Fiziev is getting you on the ground and getting you in those positions, Paddy, who's a grappler, will get you down in those positions. And I think Paddy would beat the brakes off of Justin Gaethje. I don't want to see it. I also think he'd beat the brakes off of Dan Hooker. I don't want to see that either. I want to see Paddy versus Charles. I want to see Paddy versus Arman Sarukian. I want to see Paddy versus somebody who can actually threaten his style and not just another old, washed-up striker, because he's proven that he can beat these guys. So let's actually get this guy some dangerous opposition that could actually give him a challenge, because he's done beating up grandpas in the UFC. He's been doing it his whole UFC career. It's time for this guy to face real competition. And speaking of facing real competition, Israel Adesanya comes back, or is wanting to come back, and calling for Sean Strickland. And he said he needs to get some of these fights back that he's lost. So he wants to get a rematch against Sean Strickland. He thinks he can win in the rematch. If you guys haven't seen recently, Israel Adesanya has been training with David Goggins. And as we saw for Tony Ferguson, that didn't necessarily go the best. But being that he's doing the David Goggins training like outside of his training camp, this could be a good thing for Israel Adesanya. Training with Goggins, getting his mind right. Maybe Israel Adesanya, after being a 5-time defending UFC middleweight champion, a 2-time UFC middleweight champion, 12-0 in the UFC at one point, everything in the world he could want, and then he lost it, and then now he's on a 3-fight losing streak, probably struggling to find that motivation to continue to fight. And what better guy to bring in than David Goggins to motivate you to fight? I think it's good for Israel Adesanya's mindset if he's doing the training with David Goggins before training camp. You don't want to be doing all that harsh training on your body while you're in the middle of training camp. That's just going to wear you out. But if he does it now, takes some rest, and then comes back remotivated, maybe we can see Israel Adesanya beat a Sean Strickland. Who knows? I don't know how that second fight would go. Sean Strickland just got the break speed off of him by Dricus du Plessis over 5 rounds, got his nose broken. And then Israel Adesanya just got knocked out by Nasruddin Imavov earlier in February. So we probably would end up seeing this fight towards the end of the year, but I kind of figured this is what the UFC would gear towards once Sean Strickland lost to DDP. It makes sense. It's a big fight. They have beef. They go back and forth in press conferences. It's very exciting. And yeah, man, Izzy calls for Strickland. Let me know what you guys think of the second fight. Who wins the rematch? I would have to go slightly with Sean Strickland, but you can never count Israel Adesanya out. And Sean Strickland's not a guy that has a ton of knockout power. I know he dropped Izzy in the first fight, but I would never see Sean Strickland finishing Izzy, so he would have to outpoint him again, and maybe Israel Adesanya would come in with a better game plan. And speaking of men that need to get a better diet or game plan, Tai Tuivasa not eyeing his return to the UFC until 2026. Tai Tuivasa currently is over 300 pounds. 308 pounds to be exact, which is absolutely embarrassing for a UFC heavyweight. He is 43 pounds over the UFC heavyweight limit and not looking to fight until 2026. So this tells me this guy is eating real good. He's probably hanging out with Derek Lewis, eating Popeye's chicken, hanging out with Daniel Cormier, got the wings, got the ice cream on the side, dude. This guy is eating everything. He's eating good, and he's not fighting good because this guy's on a 5-fight losing streak. He also came out and actually said something hilariously accurate. He said all the UFC heavyweights suck outside of Tom Aspinall and John Jones, and I could not agree more. I mean, Gelton Almeida, you probably could say doesn't suck, or Alexander Volkov, but yes, a lot of those top heavyweights are just not very good, man. The heavyweight division is arguably in the worst state it's ever been in, and what better way to bring back the GOAT of heavyweight, Tai Tuivasa, with a 2026 return? I actually do think it's pretty good that he's taking some time off, because Tai Tuivasa got knocked out, I remember, by Sergey Pavlovich, and then took a rematch fight like 2 months later with Cyril Gane and got KO'd. And this guy never really gave his body some time to rest, so it's good that he's taken a year and a half off to rest. And I think this guy should have been cut from the UFC, but obviously he's a fan favorite, He's on a 5-fight losing streak, and somehow he's still ranked in the heavyweight division because the UFC has like 12 heavyweights. But either way, let me know what you guys think of Tai Tuivasa returning in 2026. Who do you think he would return to face? I could see Tai Tuivasa versus Derek Lewis in 2026, a rematch. Derek Lewis tries to get revenge. No, I'm joking, but either way, he's going to be swanging and banging, doing shoeys, hopefully, because this guy hasn't done a shoey since 2022 because he hasn't won. Isn't that crazy? Tai Tuivasa, if he returns in 2026 and gets a win, that'll be his first win in 4 years. Kind of crazy when you think about it. This guy went on a 3-fight win streak in the UFC, then he went on a 3-fight losing streak, then he went on a 5-fight win streak, and then he went on a 5-fight losing streak. So he's traded win streaks and losing streaks time and time again in his UFC career. Maybe it's time for him to go on a run. Who knows? But that's all the small UFC news going on right now in the MMA space, guys. If you guys enjoy these kind of videos, do me a favor, drop a like. It lets me know to continue making them, and leave a comment. I appreciate you guys. I'm out. Deuces.